Entity attachment can manifest in many ways and can show up differently depending on the degree they are attached to you. So in other words, it can show up subtly or overtly. As entity attachment progresses, it can lead to them having greater influence over you and your emotions, and eventually possession. It takes a lot to get to the point of possession, but you can eventually get there if you rise in resonance and open the right doors to them, essentially allowing them closer and closer to you. It also depends on the entity and their intentions and how powerful the being is, if it's an archon and so on. A sign of entity attachment is the feeling of sudden thick cold air around you that can often feel alive. It will usually touch your nose and mouth as the entity is trying to get you to breathe in their essence to try and make you rise in resonance so that they can interact with you more and prep you so they can eventually possess you. This takes time though, as it takes a lot to make a person rise in resonant frequencies to the point that they can be interacted more thoroughly by entities. This is something I will go further into on the stages of possession video I plan on making. You should be able to tell the difference between the cold air of a draft and that of an entity, but they can often be dismissed as a draft. Another sign of an entity attachment is hearing sounds like banging, cracking, or popping of doors, windows, walls, or appliances. Entities that are attached to you or your home or a person that lives in your home will often make noises and make doors creak even in response to your thoughts and things you say specifically. A clear way to know if an entity is attached to you is when you leave your home and go to other people's houses. After a few months of settling in, you will hear the banging, knocking, cracking, and they will follow you from house to house. That means they are attached to you specifically. The reason they interact with appliances is because they are trying to interact with you, but can only touch the spaces around you, as there are still natural barriers between you and them that stops them from touching you directly. When they make a sound, it creates a frequency that will try and resonate with your body and will eventually progress to them being able to touch you. But it takes a lot to get to that point. It will essentially never happen if they haven't got measures to make you rise in resonance. Another sign of an entity attachment is seeing shadowy figures in the corner of your eye, especially at night time. They will slowly move closer to you, and as you rise in resonance, you may eventually be able to see them vividly. Also, as attachment progresses, when they touch you, you may be able to feel them touching you. Entities will usually stand at a distance, typically behind you when initially attached to you, but eventually will loom over you before overshadowing your form and possessing you. This takes a lot, as I've said before, but it can lead to that. Another sign of entity attachment is having feelings that are not your own. This can sometimes manifest as gender dysmorphia, and you may feel like you're a girl when you're a boy, and vice versa. This is usually the result of a female or male entity being attached to you, as you can take on their feelings and emotional baggage. This isn't always the case, but it is a possibility. Other feelings can manifest from entity attachment, such as pains and tension in the body related to the spirit attached to you. It's even possible to get to the point where you become aggressive, manic, or have other emotional states because of entity attachment and their influence over you. The opposite can also occur, where you experience apathy and loss of emotions and fatigue. A major sign of entity attachment is experiencing a lot of sleep paralysis. As the attachment progresses, the more sleep paralysis you will experience. Sleep paralysis doesn't always mean you have negative entities and can be the result of other things, but from my experience, it is a strong sign of an entity, especially if you can't breathe. There are two main types of paralysis that you can experience when you can't breathe. The first is where they stand on your stomach and you can feel your stomach being sucked in. And the second is just not being able to breathe, as they are either trying to suffocate you by strangulation or just by covering your mouth and nose astrally. You don't always need to be able to see the entity that is trying to suffocate you, as they will often try to hide themselves from you as they stop you from breathing. Their intentions when doing this are to 1. Attempt to kill you as you are a threat to them, 2. Cause fear, install trauma and drain louche, and 3. Make you rise in resonance, as when you resist the strangling, specifically the exposure to the entity that is restricting your breathing, causes you to rise in resonance and allows them to interact with you more. As the attachment to them grows eventually, it can lead to them being able to stab you astrally in your body, stab you astrally in your astral body, and even burn your insides in this in-between state that is sleep paralysis. It takes a lot to get to that point though. Another sign of entity attachment is if you experience a lot of wet dreams, especially when you're trying to stop masturbation altogether. In my experience, wet dreams are mostly the cause of an entity. Their intentions do this to often derail you of sexual abstinence and motivate you to masturbate, as masturbation and real sex produces more sexual energy and loosh for entities than a wet dream generates. That's why if you're possessed and have a wet dream, it won't do anything, but if you masturbate, they will gain advancements in possessing you. This is from my personal experience. Both wet dreams and masturbation or sex will keep entities attached to you, but if you stop masturbating and having sex, the attachment can weaken significantly. I do not know why wet dreams don't produce the same amount of energy as masturbation, but for some reason it does. As entity attachment progresses, it can get to the point where entities will physically move your penis around and even stimulate your genitals. Another sign of entity attachment is going to bed but being awakened from sleep only a couple hours after sleeping. For example, going to bed at midnight and waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning. In my personal experience, this is a sign of a growing entity attachment and resonant frequency that was giving them more influence to interact with me in my sleep. This follows on to the next sign, which is entities having influence over your dreams and entering your dreams. As you rise in resonance, entities will be able to enter your dreams. The only way to tell usually is by noticing that something in your dreams you didn't create and almost has its own autonomy. Like, for example, a being watching you in a way that doesn't fit in. Also, your dreams will feel incredibly sedative and deep, like you are sunken in. The dream itself will also be very weird. Weird dreams aren't always a result of an entity attachment, but they can be. Constant nightmares can also be a sign. Another sign of entity attachment is having astral pills being put in the back of your throat. These are like sensations that randomly feel like something is in the back of your mouth and throat and disappear when you swallow it. Initially, the astral pills will have no effect and be subtle. But as you rise in resonance, their effect becomes stronger. They can have many purposes, but the main reason is to bring you closer to them in frequency so they can affect you and have a greater influence over you and ultimately possess you. Another sign of entity attachment is hearing a frequency that shoots through your ears, like when Gohan went Super Saiyan 2 for the first time and that red line went through his head, and it's everything almost goes quiet afterwards. I'm not talking about regular ringing in the ears, as there are many reasons for this, even though it can also be a sign. The main reason entities do this is to again influence you and make you rise in resonance by affecting your brain, ultimately so they have more control over you and so they can possess you. And of course, hallucinations like hearing voices, tactile hallucinations like being touched by something cold or wet, caressed, slapped, stung, burnt, or electrocuted are all signs of attachment, negative entity attachment. Visual hallucinations are also a sign of entity attachment. But just because you don't hear voices or hallucinate doesn't mean you don't have an entity attachment, as they can often suppress your ability to hear or see them, as that gives them an advantage in taking you over and subjugating you to the point where it's too late to seek help and defend yourself. I've found in my experience, tactile hallucinations are the one thing they struggle to suppress and hide it from your awareness. Powerful entities like archons do not want you to see them for some reason and don't want to be seen. This is all my personal experience. I don't know if entity attachment can ever be positive, as it only has been negative for me and led to possession. The best way to remove entities early on is to stop being as negative and entertaining negative thoughts or feelings, along with not supplying them with energy through masturbation and sex, and not doing psychosis, including inducing drugs like weed, LSD, mushrooms, and DMT or ayahuasca. When it comes to how you get negative entity attachments, some of the ways are through experiencing massive trauma and experiencing soul loss as a result, where you lose a piece of yourself, resulting in loss of emotion and disassociation. This can open you up to entity attachment. It can also come from past lives. Addictions and drugs can open you up to them as well. Also, doing sketchy things like playing with Ouija boards and tarot or dark magic can open you up to attachments. I often leave extra notes that I didn't include in the video, or extra points I missed or needed elaborating on in the description of my videos. Godspeed.